Right.
Yes, folks, we are live, we are live, we are live on the library agenda. Beaming to you from Trinidad and Tobago, representing library out to the world. Callum, how you copying? How you copy there?
I coming through loud and clear. Well, goes good night again, and we want to introduce the man, Terran Abner. He is, as we have seen on advertisement before, he's a mental health professional. He's a social worker. Well, we let him say, but we're going to take a couple of minutes, let things build, because I see we are no viewers stepping yet usually.
Right,
We are just
gotta
pull
share.
up usually at 8 o'clock sharp. There's 10, 12 people which are ready, so we don't know what we're going tonight.
All right.
As per usual, I see one will touch down. As per usual, folks, send your comment through one time. Let us know if you're hearing us clearly, if you're seeing us, any audio issues. Touch down and let me know what's going on. As always, share. Share the love, share the life.
Yes, man.
Chef, you started shares yet?
And now going into it. So
All right, let me
what I
share
think,
my end.
what I think we could do, you will share library in your know from library, please.
Okay, no problem.
Right? I go share otherwise. What I think we could do, we could play the poem in the meantime.
Okay, put it up now. In the meantime,
Right.
why we do that?
Nice. So why we do the sharing? Nice, man.
Not for women. The title alone may sound contentious, is not that. It's just as we stepped into new eras, much of what we know as man has been classed as error. Men now live in terror, afraid to be man, afraid to be given the brand of toxic. The story of man has received a plot twist. As such, this generation frowns on tradition. So woe unto the man who still pounds his chest and says, I am the man. Such expression is classed as violent. But last time I checked, when I beaten my chest, that is when I'm proud of myself. So this is a man poem. A man who still heads the household poem. Armed with that iron fist, but a cocoa butter palm. His family feels safe from harm, yet comforted in his arms. They know he's soft, but they also know he could be hard. So this is a man poem. A man who still believes that crying is temporary. For inside of the tears, there must be a victory, an overcoming solution. This is a man poem who knows that man must come out of his ruins. This is a man poem, a spotlight for the man who still have the night inside, knowing that women do not naturally need saving. But if they are in danger, I'd save them or die giving it a try. That is why they call me man, and this is a man's poem. For the men who still see themselves as kings, presenting themselves as beings not afraid to spread glorious wings to seek his queen. Knowing that the attraction to woman is not some ill-fated omen. Yes, in this poem, men still pursue women. I told you this was a man poem. A man who knows that he answers to a greater being. So the earthly skin, that has its shedding to do. His mistakes are not his permanent state. A man knows he has some growing to do. Constantly. He knows when to put aside the ego. But blessed is he who knows when it is time to gloat. In this poem, the man still wants to be the GOAT in whatever he does. He strives for greatness from the way that he works to the way that he loves. In this poem, men still take pride in self. They appreciate the bass in their voices and the way the gym gives them the choice if to feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator, if to just rock back and feel like themselves. In this poem, women still like manly men and do not hope for a replica. I guess this poem is from the old school where fathers and sons played cowboys or Indians, yet the son never came out a gun fool. Man, this poem so old school. Man still know how to take talk in the field of sports and responds with his skills. That is how men does sort things out. This poem so old school. It's still walking on the side of the road with the oncoming cars. Cause if a brakes cable bust, then you rather take the lash than the woman who is half of your heart. The other half you keep for yourself for your own personal breathing. This poem so old school. It not leaving the burning house till the woman and children and family pet come out. His man we name, and as man we know how to blot out coward when it's time, except when a cockroach fly inside. Man, men have had it in an age where we are targeting man's failed habits. This poem is a reminder that man still having madness, and this is something to be proud of. And yes, we still in tune with our emotions, but there is a scent that is man. It is a rough kind of smooth. Know when to be rude, know when to tell your doubt move, know when a bout must be brewed, know when it's time to stop feuds and be cool. In this poem, man still submits to God and lives as such. So let that train your sons, because God alone knows what they expect of men in 2021.
Wow. Wow.
A powerful piece. Well,
Mr. Darren Sandy. Kudos to
Yes,
Mr. Darren Sandy. Lovely piece.
well, folks, you all are a bit worried there because when we started at 8 o'clock, we didn't see our usual people that will be there. And now we see everybody running. So just forgive all you. I know a lot of people trying to beat the curfew, trying to get inside before the purge whistle blow. So we will forgive you guys. So as we were saying when we started off, today's episode is dedicated to men's mental health, and we thought it appropriate to bring in a professional, and this is why we brought the man Terran Abner. So just before we start, we will play back the ad, just to remind you folks what we are about tonight, and then afterwards we're going to open the floor to Mr. Terran Abner.
What do you see when you see a man? Some see kings, some see warriors, some see providers, but very few see the pains and mental struggles men go through.
My name is Terran Abner, social worker, mental health professional, and this Thursday, the 24th of June at 8 p.m., I will be your special guest as we discuss men's mental health issues on the Library agenda. Looking forward to see you there for a very exciting and informative conversation.
All right. So, Mr. Abner, we turn over the floor to you. Introduce yourself and tell people what you're about and who is the man, Terran Abner. But wait, sorry, Mr. Abner, my bad. I want to pull it back one time. Let us talk. We usually start here with recognizing the Most High, and when you miss up me, if I didn't do that, I'm sorry I want to stop you from speaking with Terran. So, as always, we know we have a lot of different religious beliefs in the country and the world, who are more religious and spiritual, more spiritual and religious as the case may be. So you recognize Islam, you recognize Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever your pursuits are. And as always, the man Iran and Salam always remind us to remember the ancestors. We just take a little moment, a couple seconds, a minute, to recognize and have a moment of silence for whatever higher being than yourself you recognize. Thank you. Now, Mr. Abner, now we're going to be here. So, introduce yourself to the Library agenda. So, welcome to the Library agenda and tell us who is Terran Abner. The floor is yours.
All right. So, good night, ladies and gentlemen, friends, and I get some echo from somebody. Friends and family. Yeah. Right. Followers of the Library agenda. So, it's a special privilege for me to be here tonight. Right, and again, as advertised, my name is Terran Abner. Okay, So I am a social worker, a counselor, um, yeah, a mental health professional, and that's what I do. My experiences in the field of psychiatry and mental health. I have years of experience in psychiatry, having worked as a psychiatric social worker. I would have worked with children. I would have worked with adults in communities, persons with substance abuse issues. I would have worked even in the forensic department, persons who are criminally insane and so forth, or declared or thought to be criminally insane. Right, at present, I'm employed with a branch of the Ministry of National Security as part of their employee assistance program. Right, and so I'm just giving you a sense of who I am, so that I can be of service to you. I mean, your questions and your concerns, feel free to ask questions and so forth. And I always tell persons mental health is my passion. I really enjoy working in that area of mental health because I think it has always been a very neglected area of health generally. Generally, a neglected area of health. It's something that we take for granted. It's something that we take lightly. And the reality is, as I often tell persons, um, you can't have any other kind of health without having mental health, right? So you can never have physical health without mental health. So at the heart of everything is your mental state, your state of well-being, because it's what happens in the mind usually drives the body. I like to give the example of persons who, in the absence of a physical diagnosis, go about living their lives normal. But once a diagnosis is made physically, perhaps you've been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, diabetes, hypertension, any type of illness, you realize that sometimes once a person gets a physical diagnosis, then they begin to experience symptoms. Then they begin to wither away because you see, usually when the mind goes, the body has a way of following wherever the mind goes. And so I like to tell persons generally, that there is a thin line between mental health and mental illness. Very few, or very many of us cross the line. Some of us cross the line and don't even realize we have crossed the line. There's a thin line between having mental health and between experiencing mental illness. So tonight I'm really excited to be here as an advocate of mental health to share with the library agenda, to just engage in this conversation with the other panelists, and just to entertain your questions to see how best I could support and give any type of guidance to anybody who's tuned in tonight. So I mean, this should be really exciting. All right. So that's just me for the introduction, guys.
Well, thank you very much for that. And it is also very ironic that this month is Men's Health Month, and last week from the 4th to the 20th is Men's Mental Health Month. So we really want to focus in on men's mental health because we really believe it to be a topic in our humble point of view on the library agenda. And my friend Chef, who wears another hat with Lowe's Jets, and it's a topic that he himself and his organization would have dealt with before about men's mental health. In your professional opinion, maybe personally, if you want to touch on it, how much of attention and a highlight and do men or society, better yet, pay to and or recognize men's mental health and their social well-being as being important or not important, the case may be?
All right. So let me start by painting this picture so we can have an appreciation of how important the issue of mental health is as it pertains to men. All right. Now, generally, I'm speaking in terms of general statistics, it's quoted that on average, men would die 7 years or die average of 7 years. They're younger than women, 7 years younger than women. So generally, men are more inclined to die before time. 2,
Hmm.
men are 4 times more likely than women to commit suicide. Now, if you look at studies, and I know many people might want to know about this, suicide in itself, at one point in time, was considered a man problem. And I know some
Wow.
people's eyebrows are probably raised. Because here's why. Generally, when we look at the information, the statistics, internationally and so forth, information will show you some simple things. It shows you that women have a greater incidence of attempted suicide. But actual completing the act of suicide, there are at least 60% more men actually commit suicide. So that we avoid committing. If a man says he is going to kill himself, you know he has reached the point where it is beyond that block. How many murder suicides do you see involving a woman murdering a man and then murdering herself, killing herself? Anybody want to take a crack at it? Yeah. So it's usually the other way around, not so?
Zero.
Generally speaking, again, and that is simply a reflection of a severe mental breakdown on some level that would have pushed a male man to that point in time. So that again, you might hear me say male man, it's just a term that I use to refer to male, right? So we have to understand that when a man goes to the doctor, who usually asks more questions, his wife or the man?
Wifey for sure.
Wifey for sure, right? So we generally ask less questions. If we look at even the persons who probably tuned in tonight to this program on mental health illness or men's mental health, I am pretty sure that the larger percentage of persons tuned in are female. Should we take a poll just to see? No, yes. I don't know.
Say again, I didn't quite catch that one.
No,
Well,
I said take a poll on the persons that are tuned in here tonight for this program. How much you want to bet that there are more women tuned in here than men?
Well, a quick look at the comments. We see Etrich, Makisa, Sonia, Miss Harry, Mr. Austin, right? 1 man, Mark Balo saying 2, right? Tenors 3, right? Vernon Doyle. Then we back to the ladies, Marian Hussein, Betty Jeremiah, right? So the women leading so far in the comment section at least. So that could be a representation of the wider audience.
Highly possible. So that in my experience, I've observed that even though I work in a male-dominated arm of the Ministry of National Security, male-dominated, the higher percentage of our clients may actually be female. So again, these are pointing to some of the issues that we can look at as we continue. If we look at it generally speaking, in terms of the amount of persons who may experience some mental illness, it is generally said that 1 in every 5 persons experiences some mental illness at some point in time in their life, or some mental breakdown or so forth. 1 in 5 or 1 in 4. And so that we understand that generally speaking, mental illness is something that you can never tell. One day, as I said at the start, there's a thin line between health and mental health, and many persons cross the line, don't realize they cross the line, right? Good. I see some good stats there, right?
Yeah, well,
So
what I did
some
research before we came on the program, and this is I'm gonna tell you what I got it from. I got it from Luke TT. Is a study they did on the 2020 stats saying that in 2020, 74 people recorded as committing suicide in Trinidad and Tobago. Of that, 60 were men and 40 were women. Yet when you do the cross section of how many people in Trinidad and Tobago as opposed men to women is something like 51% women, 49% men. So then if the amount of men to women is almost the same in Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time, but it isn't so much towards the amount of suicides that there are men, then we sincerely have a problem with men's mental health, because I'm taking suicide is not a normal thing. Chef, I think Terran fell off, his signal fell off for a while there.
Yeah, it looks like he had a little issue with his camera there, but he should be back on shortly.
Yeah, but boy, we know what that's on this show here. I think he knocked it out. I think I'm having that problem too. I think he knocked the webcam, so that's causing the problem. So in the meantime, while he's coming back on, let's go through some of the comments, Chef.
Lovely.
Yes, so I'm gonna take down this banner here.
Roger, yeah.
All right. Nice. Let's go to the comments. As always, our executive producer, Ding is on the inside first. He said, "Good night, guys. Have a great show. Thanks, Ding."
Right. She did send apologies. She did send apologies. She wouldn't be able to make it tonight.
Yes,
she
had that.
Yeah.
Yes, and she's actually, and the reason why she's not going to be here tonight because she wants to see about the spirit. But she said she had a church service tonight, which we really want to take care of, and we respect that. You know what I mean? Like positive vibes. She praying for us. What else we have? We have Makiza Nicholas saying good night, everyone.
Yes, Makiza, always welcome.
Yeah, we have the man Dwayne Francis saying good night, all. You know,
in the building.
Oh, Dwayne. Top work by Dwayne right now. We see Dwayne doing a big home project out there.
Cast up the man right now, boy.
But yeah, on top of the building. But watch Dwayne. Yeah, start work now. We do that more, boy. Even nothing possible.
That's a dollar.
But we know how it is. We know. He's a guy really a jack of all trades, and he really loves his family and puts in that work, and we respect that brother, admire that brother.
Yeah.
You know? As always, we have lovely Miss Sonia Maxwell on the inside. Good night, Miss Sonia. She is watching right there with you guys. Bless up. Thank you, ma'am, as always. We have Mr. Harry saying good night, all. Good night, Miss Harry.
Miss Harry.
As always, good to see you. We have Deborah Sutton saying good night, all. Deborah.
All the regulars, boy. Night, Debbie.
And we have Dwight Austin on the inside, and Dwight Austin is going to join us tonight. Because Dwight, when he was one of the person who initiated this conversation, we were having our Facebook conversation. And I said to him, this is a good conversation for the Labra agenda, and he asked to be there. So Dwight, as a matter of fact, in the meantime, while Mr. Abner is looking out his technical issues, log in because he had the code. So Dwight, join us and we can currently come share with you, Dwight. So Dwight, join in one time. So Dwight should join us in a couple of minutes. We have the man of the cloth, Mark Balu, sing on the inside. Good night, all he says. As always, Pastor, we're glad to see you, and we appreciate you being here, and we just feel blessed every time you are here, my friend.
Yeah, I feel Pastor Balu sing had to come on the show today, We had to bring the pastor to somebody. Pastor, so you make contact with you to come and tell us about the work you've done in library and continue to do, man. Blessings.
I see Terran coming back one day now. We have Dwight saying that's powerful. I think you was referring to the poem. That was a poem. Who was the artist again? Who presented us again, Chef?
Darren Sandy, performing artist. So we'll have to run that again, boy. People need to see that again.
Yeah, definitely. We run it again. Yeah, man.
Not for women.
But ladies don't take it the wrong way, but it's not that type of poem. We have tenors on the inside. Fire. He enjoyed the poem. As always, glad to see you, tenors. We have the man Nomi. Blessed love to each and everyone here, man, Nomi. He's asking where H. Williams, don't worry. She here already, Nomi. She touched down, say goodnight, and she go on, Nomi. As always, we have the lovely Marianne who said inside. Good night, all. Marianne is a serious Italian fan. Marianne has taken Italy to heart in the football. When you think you like a team, Marianne is a true Italian. Wow. Right now, she's on top of the world because they have Zuri went through their group, won all their games, and didn't see that goal. So right now, you can't talk to Marianne right now.
Right.
We have, as always, Miss Betty Cherryman inside. Saying, yes, good night, Larry. Good night, Miss Betty. So we see Dwight on the inside already, line up himself as soon as he's ready. Dwight, just give me a head shake when you're ready to come in.
You ready?
Right. You ready, man? We're bringing Dwight. Yeah, man, Dwight. Good night, Mr. Austin.
Good night, everyone.
All right, folks. So this is Mr. Dwight Austin. This is one of my personal friends, but he's a fellow who point of view I really respect. We say we want to talk about men's mental health, so we want to have a very dynamic show tonight and get people from all facets, all point of views, because everybody has custom here and Chef, so we mental health already. All mental health is not. So you to bring somebody from your house, Abner come back once. So we have a full panel.
Nice.
Abner?
Right. I hope all the scene me loud and clear now.
Yeah, man. So we just brought Dwight inside the something for you because we don't make jokes, we pick up line something. So we brought Dwight in to join the conversation. So where were we? What were we talking about, Chef?
Yeah, so I was just generally sharing the reality of, again, how the issue of mental health is something that is of great importance for men in particular. All right. And so that for us to really understand and appreciate that, there are certain things we have to know. We have to understand what is mental health, and so that your mental health is generally a state of well-being, a general state of well-being, where a person has the ability. Now again, when we take mental health, people usually take mental illness, and we start to think you're mad, you're depressed, you're this, you're
True
talking,
that.
but let's talk about general mental health, because usually it starts somewhere, and it's important for us to understand that where the whole mental health. So it's a general sense of well-being. All right, it's a general sense of well-being. So that therefore, mental illness then is really when you have a diagnosable set of mental disorders or mental conditions that really speak about alterations that have been made in your thinking, the way you think, your mood, the way you feel, and of course the way you behave, or usually a combination of those things. So that
Very
mental
true. Very true.
illness is something that happens along a continuum. Good.
Very true.
So for example, if you are a person, you are a human being, and you don't get depressed sometimes or feel sad sometimes, well, then we need to be concerned about you. All right? Because it's quite normal for us to feel sad sometimes, for us to feel depressed sometimes. But once symptoms persist, there are two things. Once symptoms persist and increase in severity over a certain period of time, you can then say, okay, a person is probably entering into some kind of mental illness,
Depression.
as the case may be, right? So it's okay to feel depressed, but being depressed and suffering from depression are two different things. Now, that's one of the things I mentioned, because I know it's something that we may all be familiar with on some level. So that when we speak about the well-being of an individual, generally we look at it in the context of three spheres. There's your emotional well-being, which really has to do with those feelings, that sense of satisfaction, that sense of happiness, feeling happy, cheerful, peaceful. Great. Then you have your psychological well-being, and then there's your social well-being. So that the well-being spans across those three things: your emotional feelings, your psychological, your thinking processes, and as well as your social, in terms of how you interact with persons and so forth. Good. So we good so far? Following? Nice. So yeah.
Well, before we let you go on, let me let Dwight touch on his take on mental health and mental well-being, because it's a topic is very near and dear to his heart, and maybe you could bounce off him and clarify whatever. So Dwight, introduce yourself first of all, tell people who you are, and then give us your take on men's mental health.
Good night, everyone. My name is Dwight Austin. As Callum said, this is a topic I find that not a lot of light and attention is paid to it. Because for me, your mental health and your mental well-being starts from the age of, I would say, probably 5, 6, 7 coming up. In that, if you look at how parents, mostly mothers, interact with their daughters as opposed to interact with their sons. Whereas girl children are allowed to express themselves. They are allowed to vent. They are allowed to be emotional. With a boy child now, you will see plenty of society on the whole are basically teaching young men that, hey, that what you're trying to do there, that emotion you're trying to show there, that weak. That is a weak feature as a man. Toughen up soul there. Hey, man up. So from young men are taught to, hey, showing emotional in terms of probably venting, crying, probably talking about it, it's unhealthy. So that is where that habit is cultured from young. Growing up now, you might reach the age of teenager. You start to go into the realm of relationships, interacting with peers. A man in a relationship, a woman in a relationship is two different things. Because I would say is that if a woman is aggrieved in a relationship, she is allowed to talk about it, again, to vent about it. And the whole of society will be like, yeah, girl, that okay, that thing. A man does that, wow, he is slandered and bashed from here till eternity. So again, young men are taught, keep it inside.
Yeah.
Now, I would say years of a young man doing this to now where he reaches the age of adulthood, the 20s, early 30s, he has spent almost his whole life not showing emotions. He has spent almost his whole life not being able to express himself. So he has a lot of pent-up emotions, probably anger, whatever you want to call it, from young. Then now you find in relationship, I think it was Mr. Taran Abner, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Taran Abner, right? He touched on why you would see plenty times in terms of relationships of the murder suicide. Right? The murder suicide is because when a woman comes out of a relationship, she is given the time to actually sit down and grieve over it, get over it. How can I put it, boy? She's allowed to vent herself. She would have probably some friend, her parents, whoever, that she truly, well and truly, is able to get it out of her system. You know what society does tell a man? Boy, what I'm telling you, boy, there are plenty fish in the sea. So he can deal with the trauma from this relationship, but society telling him go and get into another relationship. At no point in time he was given the time to really and truly sit down and get out, because even though a man maybe
get over.
Exactly. At no point in time he was given any time to really get over it. What he done is basically deflect. But the hurt's still there, the emotion's still there, everything's still there. He has not dealt with it at all. Understand? He has not dealt with that at all. Understand? So society done showing him, hey, you being weak and being, how can I put it, for I'll use actually jargon. You having at a banker for that girl, nah, they're not strong, they're weak. He never dealt with all his past, and all this is adding up. And that is why you see sometimes when you see a young man or a man explode, people just want to know, but he's such a good boy, he's such a quiet man. Where that come from? That was always there. It's just this situation is basically the tipping point, but it was always there because he has been cultured by society in that for years to be that way. He was basically brought up to be cold and nonchalant and boy, what I'm telling you, boy, were you crying over that for? Boy, toughen up, yeah? Be a man. At no point in time he was well and truly given the avenues like ladies are given to basically deal with certain things on the whole. I see a lady in the comment ball ego. I would not necessarily say ego because the ego stems from, again, your upbringing. I guess we would, I'm pretty sure we have some mothers in this forum, right? If being honest, how many times do mothers actually sometimes sit down with their son and be like, boy, what bothering you? Or even if you have teenage sons, they end up in a relationship and are done. How many times has a mother actually sat with her teenage son or her early 20s, early 30s son and be like, boy, you're good? You're good? You're okay? Or what going on with you? What went on? How are you feeling? How are you feeling now that you and this person done? How are you feeling? How many mothers actually did that or do that?
But right, let me let Terran touching on this now. Wait, let me hear what Terran's point of view on this, because now we're bringing me a format. But one thing I would say, brother, you're spitting, brother.
Yeah, man. The man ain't talk, he preached, man. Yeah, so I mean, it is true. And so what we really have to deal with in terms of, as when it comes to men, and dealing with issues of mental issues, you see, the challenges, one has to do a lot with those traditional gender roles that we have, which are perpetuated by our society, as you mentioned. And so therefore we look at that concept of traditional masculinity. Now, I am for that, but I always say, in as much as sometimes men don't express themselves, I would quote and refer to a book that was written by Bishop T.D. Jakes. T.D. Jakes wrote a book, and he called the book He Emotions. So now, the challenge with that and me is that what we often try to do is, if a man doesn't express emotion the way that we are also accustomed to seeing emotion expressed, we think that he's not being emotional. Sometimes we think the man is not sensitive, but that's why T.D. Jakes in his book says, he said, a man don't have emotions, he has emotions. Now the reality is, men are very sensitive. Men are very emotional. I'm talking about average men, normal men. I'm not talking about other. But the thing is, we express emotions, men on the whole, but we express emotions differently. Yeah. So that the thing is, sometimes we want men to express emotions the way women express emotions. Good. You want men to express emotion the way children express emotion. So this is just a perspective. So that my thing is, most of the time, men are crying out. But the way the man is crying out, you don't perceive it as crying out. You don't perceive it as him having a problem. And that is something we need to identify. Because there are men who are expressing, pouring out their heart in the way that they know best. Right? You know, there's this great book. It was written by John Gray, Dr. John Gray. He wrote a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Get your hands on that book if you could. It helps you to understand the opposite sex and so forth, they say. The reality is, he was looking at men, particularly male depression and female depression. Now, the reality is, when a woman experiences some measure of mental discomfort or disturbance, there's the direct expression of the feelings. In other words, there is now the acting in behaviors. They would cry and they would look at themselves, and it affects their self-esteem. So that what the woman, because of how their design is, a female, and this is generalizing, of course, right? They're more inclined to look at how it affects them internally and to face that particular issue that they're feeling. But the male man is designed differently. So that when a man is confronted by strong and intense emotion, what he attempts to do is try to disconnect himself from the feelings. Disconnect himself from the feelings. And we have to understand that. So that his behavior, so that when a man is sometimes experiencing a breakdown, a mental breakdown, instead of acting in, what the man does is he acts out. So what you have now is an externalizing of the behavior instead of an internalizing of the behavior. How can we see this happening? So that when you see a man begins to disconnect from the feelings, what he does is he crawls into the cave. While women will come out of the cave, men crawl into the cave. So they start to withdraw. Now the reality is sometimes men withdraw and you didn't realize they withdraw yet. Right? They withdraw and they say, hey, I'm a big man, I can handle it by myself, man. Good? We have to realize now men begin to now emotionally numb, because at the end of the day, you have to do what you have to do to survive. You can't go out there, so you do things differently. And then what you have now, as I said, you have acting out behavior. So for example, let's look at men and depression. Sometimes if you feel, if a female may be depressed, let's just say, just using as an example, there may be the acting in behaviors. They may cry, they will stay inside. How many of us could understand the reality that sometimes when a man is going through a rough time, he actually looks like he's having the best time in his life? So,
you're marking me up. You're trying to put me up on.
Right? So that when so look at this. Some studies have shown that when men are actually going through a depression, they start to now preoccupy themselves with other obsessions. For example, work or sports. Yeah. There's overeating, gambling, alcohol, substance abuse, acting out behaviors, which is not really showing, not showing that they're going through pain. They say, but how he can be thing? And look, he enjoying himself, he doing this, he drinking rum all over the place, he partying, he fetting, he watching TV. Yeah.
Let me step in there for a moment, now, because I want to say this. You're kind of causing problems with that statement you make, because I don't think I have any mental health issues. I'm perfect, I have issues, but I don't think I have any mental health issues, and I enjoy all the things you speak about. I enjoy going out. I am avid about football. I take my football to heart. I like to drink my rum like everybody else. I like to lime. So how I'm assuming you really mean to say abuse of, or what we will consider overdoing it, to use that term. But the way you described it before, so like those normal things which I enjoy every day are signs of mental health. Something wrong,
Now remember, we're looking at it in the context of the individual having some emotional disturbance or some mental health concern, which is usually connected or triggered by some situation otherwise. So what I'm looking at it is in the context of behaviors that individuals engage in to buffer their mood, to escape, to have a distraction.
Yeah.
So that if the activities are aimed at you not confronting the issues that you have, but you hiding from the issues, trust me, what you have now is, as I think somebody put, you have now a suppression of emotion. So it's suppressed. And let me tell you something. Emotion, intense emotion, will always find a way to come out. It will come out in your ill health. It will come out in your interactions with persons. It will come out in different ways, but it must come out. The human body is not designed to carry that level of stress.
Yeah,
right?
As I
and so that,
as I say in that Aaron, see Aaron in the chat there, that's one of my low strengths brothers there. And I want to say Pancha that we have. One of the things they always talk about, especially this brother called Curvel, he would say men have different ways of crying then. So he said we might cry. A football sweat might be us crying on the court, playing FIFA, sweating it out in the game,
The gym,
all this kind of thing.
The gym,
So it's like we have different ways of quote unquote crying without actually crying.
Yeah. Because and you see, it's a whole concept of a lot of different things. Like I tell persons, we have to understand certain things. One, for example, anger is not necessarily a primary emotion. I tell persons anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is simply an expression of some hurt or some pain that a person is experiencing. Disappointment, rejection. But it's usually easier to express anger than it is to cry, than it is to say, hey, you hurt my boy. You hurt my feelings. I rather cuss you up and get angry and it's fight.
Mr. Abner, because I think that also goes back to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
A young lady, a woman, she is allowed to cry. A young man, the minute he starts to cry, what happens? What do they tell a young man the minute tears come to his eyes?
Let me take up this question and say it from my non-professional point of view. This is why when I made the ad for the video, I said, when you think of a man, what do you think of? And if you ask any woman, well, forgive me, women, to use them a paintbrush. On average, I'm going to use a better phrase because it might kill me. But most women would say, a protector, provider, partner, king, so on and so forth. But we are, as men, bred, taught, even the Bible says, as the head of the household, so on and so forth, to be in front. And signs of weakness, even if you look at the animal kingdom, biologically, naturally, is seen making yourself an unfit partner, a weaker mate. So that's why you will find men, we are bred from children. When you fall up and say, "What you boy, we're crying for is a girl." And
get up here.
Even to the lesser extent, the quieter extent, the less subtle extent, you tend to find the quote unquote the macho men that end up with the women that that the more physically attractive women. Don't put it that way. For want of a better phrase. So our whole society is built up in a way that it perpetuates this stigma of men hiding their emotions, keeping their emotions to themselves. And when you do show emotions,
you're weak.
Sometimes if you shout, some people might say, you're verbally abusing me. But when a woman shouts to a man, she's expressing herself. And the question is asked, said, what he do her to make me courage? Answer the question, what you do. But when I get angry and I raise my voice, I'm not talking about attacking you or cussing you, but I raise my voice, I am verbally abusing you. You know,
you're dead wrong.
Exactly. You know, and this one has irked me. This post I always say, again, happy wife, happy life. So I don't want to be happy. My happiness is a secondary matter. And you know, we laugh at it, but it is perpetuated to our young men or our young ladies. Way too many young ladies really believe that nonsense. I'm saying that is nonsense. Happy us, happy us.
From small. I
warn you guys, I have a lot of issues that I'm going to vent tonight.
That's all right. This is space straight.
Gents, comments there. Sorry, Terran. I don't wanna disengage the audience too much. We have a lot of comments coming in.
Yes,
so we can just run through them quickly. We don't want them to feel left out.
Terran, you bring all the people tonight, and don't them women talking, but my word.
Right. So I'll run through quickly. Marcus is saying you will enjoy tonight's topic. So Marcus, we're looking forward to your comments below. Jagan Sweetline Lalman Singh. Jagan was here last week, Callum. Welcome, Jagan. Welcome.
Yes.
Thanks as always, brother. Right. Miss Thomas is saying, watching the topic, enjoying it. Raga as always, blessed good night. Great topic, great show. Marceline is saying good night, everybody. Aaron Nichols, Loge Gents in the building. Big up all yourself, fellas. Big up Loge Gents, man. They've been doing the same kind of work for some years now, Terran. Talking this kind of talk on this Impact series, mentoring young men, etc. Marcus Campbell.
Good stuff.
Yeah, man. Let's talk men's mental health. A topic we need to talk about. Kyron Nathaniel, John is saying good night. Right. Quickly scrolling down. This is where the bacchanal start. Deborah mentioned socialization, operant conditioning, cultural norms. That is a big one. Cultural norms.
I touched on that. I touched on that.
Right. Marian was asking a question. Don't answer yet, Dwight, but keep it in mind. Have your pen and paper. Do you think that emotional suppression is the main reason for domestic violence here? Don't answer yet. Coming back to it. Debbie again, societal perception of masculinity and men's ego are contributory factors. You touch on this again, Dwight. So she answered lower down. Does that deflection of failure to heal result in narcissistic personalities or tendencies? Right, loaded. Marcus is asking how we fixing this because the horse is out of this table for years because society look at a black man as angry. Hey, this deep, you know, this deep, fellas.
They're firing shots in this chat, boy.
Right. So Deborah was explaining herself with the ego here. Ego in the context of a man wanting to deal with a failed relationship, but due to peer pressure or fatigue, he doesn't want to be perceived as weak by his colleagues. Right.
Touched on that.
Yes, you did. Lana Lepage, watching from California, I guess. CT.
Canada.
Okay. Raga is saying. All right, correct, Dwight. Trapped trauma, quote unquote, is easily deflected or passed by for men because society allows this. But men knowing themselves and knowing the Most High from an early age can help direct our path with life sacrifices. Here, Raga. Respect. Right, Logents again, CEO Aaron saying, awesome topic. Keep up the good work, fellas. We need more conversations like these.
Agreed.
Men, I also want you to know that crying is not a sign of weakness. Most times it's a perfect detox. Raga says so, love until. And we're almost there, fellas. Bear with me. Marian Hussein saying what is being done in Trinidad and Tobago to change the stigma about men expressing themselves respectfully. And she's saying in this pandemic, the number of suicides have increased. What resources are available to help support people so that they do not reach to the point of contemplating and committing suicide? Wow. So we had a lot of topics there, fellas. Right? I don't know which one stuck with you all, which one you want to come back to, but I'll just let Terran go first, and then Dwight could jump back in.
Yeah.
I mean, a little space for you talking, because does that actually believe that.
Yeah.
Terran like he freeze up a little bit. So Dwight,
Yeah, the man
Dwight,
passionate about the thing,
a bit
man.
about.
Look,
All right,
Terran come back.
Right. Terran, talk to us about this, man. We hearing about men and
Yeah.
their egos. We hearing about how we deal with suppress, trap trauma, etc.
Good. So again, I often tell persons to begin the whole approach to managing mental illness begins with that having an awareness of stress. You need to understand stress, because then you need to understand stress is a response to an uncomfortable situation, and so therefore there are triggers involved. Now, while I believe in the whole concepts of you know, your nature and how you nurture that nature and how you're socialized, we have to understand that when we're looking at behavior change, it's all about the replacing of old information with new information. All right? So that one, we have to replace old information with new information. While there are many theories which look at mental illness in the context of your genetic predisposition and so forth, there's nothing that could trump really the power of decision making. And so that therefore, forums like these where we begin to now put information out there that, okay, it is what you're feeling is so and so, because here's what happened. We could never treat what we don't identify, what we don't expose. So that having open conversation about these things is a stepping stone towards getting it out there. Once the conversation is started, people have a greater awareness of what it is. And then you know that, and the reality is, you know, there are many avenues for persons to get help, but it's how do we get people to get to the help? But what we have to do for that to happen is, as a community, we have to embrace the fact, we have to embrace the fact that, listen, that anybody, let me tell you, I work St. Anne's for over 7 years, and I see everybody from pastor to police, right, to children. So nobody is immune from experiencing a mental breakdown. So we have to accept the fact that it is something, it is a reality. We have to recognize these issues. We have to own the issues, and we have to learn how to confront these issues. We have to now create a safe space so that persons who are experiencing challenges can come forward and feel safe. Right? Now, the reality is there are persons who will never be sympathetic or never empathize with the topic or persons and their mental illnesses, and that is fine, that is part of life. But persons who are awoke, persons who are sensitive, now have to take the struggle by the horn and really carry that torch so that persons with mental illness could feel as though they are being heard and they are being seen. And I think in a general sense, that's how we could start to approach it. All right? I don't want to say too much, right? But a young lady spoke about, again, narcissistic personalities. And so sometimes as men, we have to be careful, because what happens after a period of time, if you develop a certain response to addressing issues, what you do is you develop a personality coping mechanism. Again, your coping mechanism forms a personality, right? That makes it difficult for you to acknowledge that something is wrong, right? And so here we now have what we speak about, those personality disorders, like your narcissistic personalities, and usually these are connected to persons who would have experienced some level of trauma, a level of trauma which would have forced them to develop this personality so that they could survive, right? So that, again, same thing the young man was saying, you would have been experiencing trauma from your childhood, come up and you realize, boy, the only way I could really not be hurt is to be like this. And you develop a personality around that. And you don't realize when that personality or that coping mechanism have shaped your response to everything in life. And that's something you have to be careful of. So again, get out there, talk. You know, let people know what you're feeling. Share your concerns. That's one aspect of it. I'll say the rest. Let the other guys chip in.
You could have one whole night in the yard, the crowd spellbound, and we listen to you.
Good. So the next part of it, I'll take one time. I'll take it one time. Now,
Yeah.
Again, so that every approach has a micro approach, a macro approach, and what we call a meso approach. In other words, there's an individual approach, a family approach, a community approach. Good? In the context of men and relationships, it's you as a man. You have to take personal responsibility for your feelings and your emotions. Own it. It is yours. Stop making excuses for your behavior. It's yours. If you're angry, say you're angry. Don't be afraid to confront the skeletons you have in your closet. Some of us are afraid of it. And unless you confront them, you'll never be able to move on. And then that's one. So as an individual, every change begins with accepting personal responsibility of being personally awake. Hey, I have a problem, boy. I need help. Secondly, we as a community in your homes, I'm talking to probably wives and mothers, create a safe space for the men. And this is about men. Create a safe space where a man can speak about what he is feeling. Don't vent, because sometimes venting probably suggests sometimes that there is a level of emotionally
trauma,
no control. And so I wouldn't say I want you to vent, but I want you as a man now to again, you have to find ways to vent. So I tell persons, I was sharing with a group over COVID. I said, make a time in the day to worry. Schedule your worry time, or else you'll worry whole day.
Wow.
I'm telling you. If it's 1 hour in the evening, sit down and you write down all the things that bothering you. Schedule the time. Because I'm telling you.
You touch on something that is near and dear to my heart, relationships. Now, you spoke about women being the partners, making themselves or the home a safe place, a place to vent, a place to speak. But you find sometimes when a man speaks about his emotions or things that might be bothering within the relationship, he is thought to be nagging or what you call them about with the issue, he always on me. So a lot of men, and I'm from an area like myself, I say nothing. I absorb. I always say people come in good and bad, so I accept it. But when, let's say, your partner has issues about something, because
you have to
women seem to be allowed to, and it's society acceptable to vent and say what's on their minds. And when they come to you now, and you get an opportunity to say what's on your mind, is an issue. And you didn't say this all the time, and so. But my whole issue is this.
I have a part to answer that what you just said there.
Sure.
Before
Why is society so predisposed and so geared? It almost seems like society designed for women, not for men. A simple example would be...
Let's keep this in mind. We always remember, remember a relationship is simply the coming together of two broken people. Because your partner
men are not allowed to be broken. Men are not allowed to be broken.
So that's it. So that remember, your partner may be just as damaged as you.
What?
So that your expectation in that relationship may be an unrealistic expectation, because your partner, because of her experiences, may not have the capacity to give you what you need so that you could express yourself. Despite her best efforts, despite the goodness of her heart, she too had an upbringing. She too had to grow up with circumstances and situations which is also triggering her response. So that's why I say usually with couples, if you are at the point where you cannot have a conversation, 1, 2, if you cannot have a conversation and what you discuss in the conversation is used as ammunition in an argument, which is shooting yourself in the foot and hanging your own relationship by a hangman, you have problems, then what you need to do is you need to get a professional third party involved. Now, for years, many people have undervalued the importance of seeking professional counseling. Understand what I'm saying? Professional counseling. And here's what happened. In my experience with couples Couples come for one session and say, hey, I went counseling by Mr. Abner. You come for one session. One session, just, I don't even know. I can't help you. Right? We say, come and put in the work. You know what? They will quicker take $3,000 and take a vacation so that they can suppress all the issues they have in the relationship than go to a professional and really unmask. And you know what happens sometimes? Some couples prefer to live in ignorance. Prefer. Because once the counseling process begins to take up and we begin to unmask certain things, some people say, you see me? Why better we did stay how we was? Yes, let me just live in the matrix, in that illusion of happiness that we created.
Wow.
But we have to realize that there is a purpose for relationship, and unless we connect with the Most High, we would not understand what is the purpose of relationship. And ideally, I tell person, relationship were not designed primarily for your happiness, right? It wasn't designed primarily for your happiness. Happiness is an end result. Relationships are designed so that you can understand who you are as an individual and the purpose for your life. That is the foundational purpose for a relationship. You must be able to know if a person in a relationship is adding value to your life or taking value from your life. Some people want to live in the matrix. You know the relationship is not adding. And let me tell you something. If something is not adding value to your life, it is taking value from your life. So some of us have to ask some serious questions, right? Because all our emotions will always be worked out in the context of relationship. Understand? It's worked out in the context of relationship. So we need relationships primarily because relationships helps us to see some things about ourselves that we first don't want to confront. Because let me tell you something. If your partner on the block tell you, boy, you rich, stupid boy. Boy, what you gonna do? You cuss him back, say, boy, you stupid too, boy, go from here. But when somebody close to you, who has intimacy with you, says to you, you see what you do there, that was real stupid. It will affect you differently. Because that person knows you on a different level. And there's another thing. Couples need to stop thinking that conflict is the end of a relationship. Let me tell you something. Conflict sometimes can be the beginning of the real relationship. Another game or they're playing for them years. Because unless couples be real and start to confront the issues that they're facing, the relationship will never grow. The man will never grow. The woman will never grow. Because conflict is what brings growth. What is conflict? Conflict is like pumping iron. When you're carrying a weight that is stronger than your capacity, it is only in pushing through that you develop the fibers to grow. All right? So I ranted. Only go ahead.
No problem. But what I have learned about conflict, this is my personal point of view, right? If myself and my partner are having a quote-unquote conflict, we don't grow if I win the argument or she wins the argument. We grow if we can find a middle ground. But far too often, and I suppose it took me a little too long to learn that, but the Lord is not with me yet. To realize that we have a dispute about something, is the idea is not to win. The idea is to push through it and figure it out. And I am sorry, and I'm going to sound like a male chauvinistic pig. I feel far too women try to win arguments as opposed to trying to solve our problem. This is our experience I've had, and you know, I suppose I'm 50% of the problem because obviously if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I have experience with them, we are having experience, you know. So I try to grow, I try to get there. But I am intrigued with this conversation.
But we have to figure out now what is a man's definition of a win, because we all have different definitions of winning.
Well, boy, a
man might say, well,
the world is getting happy while you have
a win might be to well, let me see how fast this conversation get done. Let me just hush my mouth and let the storm pass. Once the storm pass fast, I win.
I win might be. And some men, the win is if they wake up in the morning and get some stab of hot water and them, hey, I win, boy, I make it, boy.
You win, you survive, you make it through the night, you win, you get through. You ain't see your clothes outside on the lawn. But listen, you see, and that's it. There are certain things that people have to understand are things that we are not born with. We do not have a genetic, while we are gregarious creatures and we thrive off of social relationships as human beings, right? Yeah. Yeah, as human beings, we strive off of relationships. As human beings, we have to understand that certain things requires skills. Skills. Good? Skills. And not just you think you know. Because you learn either by information or experience. The sad reality is many of us take outdated old information and try to apply it to our present situation. You take your contextual information from your past relationship, from your family history, and you bring it into a new relationship and expect magic to happen. No, you need skills. One of the very important skills that persons in relationships, and I'm saying mental health is seen in the context of relationship. One important skill is what we call emotional intelligence. Right? Sit down with your partner. Read up on emotional intelligence. Understand what it means to have emotional intelligence. Right? I would even challenge you before you try to get on with a high IQ.
On emotional intelligence?
None per se. There are several books. Once you just look it up, emotional intelligence for relationships. It shows you how to manage conflicts. It teaches you how to be aware of yourself. It teaches you how to be sensitive in the context of relationship. Because remember, there's a whole spectrum or the theory of multiple intelligence. And you may have a man who is bright in the brain, but emotionally he may be dunce. Or a female might be the same thing. And there's also another important level of relationship, what we call relational intelligence, which is something people need to understand. How do we have relational intelligence and how do we have emotional intelligence? When you sit down with a counselor, talk about those things. Because the thing is, people just expect things to work. And when they don't work, what we have are unmet needs and unrealistic expectations, which leads to what we call disappointment, rejection, hurt, and pain, right? That could, again, cause stress and strain and lead to levels of mental illness. So I hope that kind of wrap it in a sense there. So maybe sometime we'll talk about emotional intelligence, right?
Look, there's Marian Hussein recommending a book by Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence. So we got a recommendation from the audience.
Thank you, Marian. Yeah, but I mean, information is out there. Reality is, information is out there. So a person has to now get out there and realize, you see, there are many things we have to now redefine. And it is calling for men like yourselves who understand the issues and are willing to redefine certain stereotypes and certain definitions. And once we begin to redefine it, we lay a foundation for us to grow and to move forward. But I must say, despite all the negative press and so forth with regards to men and their mismanagement of their emotions and behavior, I could say that I have noticed that a lot of men are a lot more emotionally in touch. Unlike times in the past, I mean, you're seeing a lot more men engaged with their children, you know. Outside of the men who have real deep psychological issues and abuse their children, whether it's physically, sexually, or verbally otherwise, generally, the average man would have a pretty good idea of how to relate to his daughter, which shows that he has capacity to be sensitive, capacity to be emotional, capacity to manage those emotions. I often tell persons there are some things we don't do when the police officers speak to us on the road. So then how is it easy for you to do it at home with your family and your loved ones? Because you are in a comfortable space. And sometimes we take relationships for granted. So I mean, we end up on that vein, but you know, it's a lot. It's a very, very, you know, very dynamic topic, because once you're talking mental health, you're talking about family, society, the nation, generally speaking. You know.
Well, as you spoke about children and men, and our well-being. There's a quote we got off of Facebook from one of the same guys who's on the program tonight, on Raga, and he says, let me pull it up, take extra time out to listen to children these days, because it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men and women. Raga says so, love until. You know? And we must admit, when we saw the quote, we said definitely we're going to use that quote on the show tonight because we thought it would have been very poignant. But we see Dwight there. Dwight, anything I want to add to the comment, because we can't keep Mr. Terran whole night, you know, and yourself. So,
you said something earlier when you was talking about your point. Excellent point, by the way. But I just want to add to that. There would have been times like, you see, gentlemen would have actually tried in relationships or in interactions with ladies on the whole to open up. So they would have bared themselves, they would have spoken to this lady or whoever about certain things that society would deem weakness, but it truly bothers the man. And I think Mr. Abner spoke about it. Somewhere down the road in an argument, that weakness was thrown in his face. So you know what you just showed that man there? Alright. I can't really do this because somewhere down the road, it might end up being thrown in my face. I was just expanding on the point you was making in your topic now.
Yeah. Because you see, the reality is, and
for a lot of men, that is very scary. That is very scary because I think if you ask 100 men, at least 90 of them would say that is a fear of them actually opening up to somebody and someone throwing it back in the face somewhere down the road in an argument.
See, sometimes problems exist and we don't realize a problem exists. And I'll tell you two reasons. I often hear somebody older head say, well, you know how much licks I get when I was young and I ain't turned out too bad. And then my response is usually, you're sure? Right? And the reason why I'm saying that is because sometimes when something becomes culturally normal or a person grew up in an environment where something is a normal course of action in the home, you might think is a problem, but your partner or the person who mightn't think is a problem, they expect you to just, hey, that is just get over that now. That's the argument, tomorrow is another day. And you get over that, but your context is totally different from that other person. So therefore, now we have a problem because now what I am thinking is a serious thing and it's affecting me, it's hurting emotionally. For you, it is a light matter. Problems. That's why I tell persons, sometimes we only see the repercussions of what happens today. Again, the challenges that we see today is simply the fruit of a seed that was sown over a generation ago, which is probably 30, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Right? That's where it begins. So that's why I say I am excited, and I don't have to say excited, but very interested to see this generation that experiencing these next 2, 3 to 4 years of social isolation from this lockdown in COVID. I'm interested to see how they are now going to adjust and manage relationships and the mental health concerns that will now come about as a result of these social changes that we have. That's just one of the things I keep my eye open for. I hope God spare my life to see it because it will have implications from a mental health perspective, from a social perspective. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. I want to agree with you, Terran, because a couple of weeks ago we touched on it, mental health during the pandemic. I don't know if you have any statistics out there, but already we have the anecdotal data suggesting that domestic violence is on the rise. Suicides, I think Marian had put up some statistics earlier. Callum did as well. But specifically during the pandemic, a lot of men are out of work. A lot of men are displaced, right? And we see
my thoughts on that is really one of the areas, the two areas I think
they are accustomed.
Correct.
The two areas I think have largely been affected by that concerns is one, the issue of what we call traumatic stress. It's a trauma, right? The research shows that trauma changes 3 things about a person. It changes the way you view God, the way you view yourself, and the way you view others.
Yes.
This has been a trauma. What has been the trauma? The trauma has been the change. Because change could be very traumatic for some people. And then once people's perception of God, themselves, and others have changed, then again, it's just a matter of time before we begin to see the fruit of those changes. So that's trauma, one. The other thing that I think we need to look at in terms of the pandemic and how it affects our mental health is the issue of grief and loss. Because we are all acquainted with what happens when we lose a loved one. But I'm saying there are many men losing their jobs, losing their spouses, losing loved ones who die as a result of COVID. And so for the first time, this generation is experiencing a community grief. Because if someone in your family hasn't died, yet somebody in neighbor family or somebody down the road, somebody you know, has died or has been affected by COVID. And once we're dealing with issues of grief, we're dealing with issues of fear, we're dealing with issues of anxiety. So we enter into the realm of mental health. There's one theorist, her name is Kubler-Ross. She identifies 5 issues. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, But then there's one other theorist, I forgot his name, but he said that there's another step to that. Those are symptoms of grief. Grief is how do we make meaning? How do we make meaning of what we are experiencing? Because unless we can assign a meaning to everything that is happening, people will be in trouble. Trust me. I'll tell you why. Because the human brain always wants to get an answer. The human brain is always trying to reason out things. Good? So grief and loss is a big, big one. Grief and loss is so big. There are people, their parents lost. They lost a loved one. Look how big it is. And you know, they only begin to grieve the person years after, because the first 3 years after the person dies, they live in denial. And in denial, we repress and we suppress emotion. You know, there are some persons lost their loved ones when they were a child. And it's only when they get big, they start to cry and they realize, wait now, my mother not here, boy. And they know crying. Grief and loss. Some men lost their job. And that was another thing, Petra Train and the good folks in Labrie and Point 14, young men who lose their jobs. And the grief and loss that comes with that.
Well, half the panel here is that myself and Chef, we are both former Petra Train employees.
All right.
Yeah,
so people don't understand that when you lose a job, it's like you lost a loved one. You know? People don't understand that. You know? It hits your self-esteem.
Being inadequate.
Listen, you feel angry. You feel depressed. One day you're questioning your very existence, because the reality is you spend more hours on your job than you do in your own house. Make sense?
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. A larger percentage of your life is spent on your job.
Very true.
So you must have an emotional attachment, whether you know it or like it or not. I see men who...
To be really honest, I still have each one and every one of those emotions still, right? I still have them. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. Yeah. I'm still confused. I still ask why. You know, what time I jump up and say, oh, go away and take my walk. You know, so...
Yeah. But, so unless we find meaning, unless you find a meaning to it, that's what I say. So unless we find a way to accept and attach meaning to these losses, unless we find a way to do that, it's going. Every time you see something that reminds you, there'll be a trigger. You see, there'll be a trigger, and that's another important issue when it comes to mental health and mental illness. Knowing your triggers. Knowing your triggers and being man enough to accept, hey, you see that, I can't deal with that one. I'm walking away. Because sometimes the problem is...
No, I have been accused of recognizing my trigger, and I walk away and say, listen, I enough for this conversation. Let's take a recess. I've been told I run from the topic. I'm trying to escape. I'm not, you know, so like somebody is saying here, look at that. Until now somebody is saying, I think that people spend so much time running from their issues. But this pandemic is forcing people to stay in one place. So they have no choice but to listen and face issues. So it is funny that you spoke about triggers. So if someone recognizes their trigger and wants to say, you know what, I'm thinking I reach my boredom, but I want to walk away and take a little while to, calm themselves and come again when they can probably deal with the issue better. Do you think that's a healthy thing, or do you think it's wrong? I don't know. Give us a little, thoughts on this.
I think it is very healthy, right? Because I'm saying, I think it is healthy, but it must be done in the context of an understanding. And this is where what I spoke about before, emotional intelligence, is concerned. Two important aspects of emotional intelligence is having self-awareness, which is being aware of how you are feeling in any situation. But also is another key component of emotional intelligence is what we call empathy. And I have a former lecturer of mine, she defines empathy as being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, but respecting the fact it is their shoes and not your shoes. Now, you have to now be able to be aware of how you're feeling, but understand how the person you're walking away from is also feeling. Now, if you are at the point where you're having what we call red light, or your anger in the red, then better don't walk away, run away. Because they might, one of them fellas here in a uniform, they might have to come and talk to you. Right? If you know you're at that point, fellas, walk away. If you can't walk, run. But it comes in the context of having that intelligence. Now, I always tell persons, when you have for example, if you're looking at the context of relationship, which I'm assuming, it is not fair to walk away from confrontation indefinitely. It is not fair. So therefore, persons, if it's a persons who share intimate relationship, establish a proper time. So listen, I'm not in a place to discuss this with you at this point. I'm unable to do it there. Can we discuss this tomorrow?
But Terran, let me be real now. You know, tomorrow never good enough for them. It's always now. Let me be real.
And that would be you. And that would be you shooting yourself. And if we will discuss this tomorrow.
So
because let me tell you something.
Women need to meet us halfway then.
Right. Of course.
Right. Women
and as much as.
Go ahead.
Of course, yeah. I hope you ain't trying to get me in trouble there,
Right. No. I just say, women are the meet us halfway in an instance like that, because I mean, their time is now, our time may be later. So we have to make some kind of compromise there, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. So that's why so particularly in the context of couples must know how to manage conflict, because if you are in a relationship and you have no conflict, something wrong. Something definitely wrong. It is inevitable. If there's any man here who listening to this chat or in this panel that never had conflict with a partner, just show by a raise of hand, right? And whatever you drinking, I want a whole case, right? So what I'm saying is, conflict is inevitable. So prepare for it. Have that conversation. You see? Have that conversation. These are the what we call tough talks that people need to have now, right? While it is day, before the night come and no man can work or talk. Discuss, okay, this is how we want to establish, this is how we're going to deal with conflict in this home. This is how we're going to, if we have a thing, we're going to talk about it, we're going to sit down. And just understand that every time you bypass the process of an agreement, you have created insecurity and you have shot yourself in the foot. So if you tell your partner, listen, I really can't deal with this right now. Let's talk about this over lunch tomorrow. And lunchtime come tomorrow and you duck them again. You just shoot yourself in the foot. You create insecurity and a lack of trust, which has just added another layer of issues for you to deal with.
Wow.
right? Oh, let me make me feel like there's a couple session here, boy. Like.
No, well, I think we're trying to say this to you, and coming from the other three gentlemen in the panel, a lot of men's mental health and coming from external forces of society, and a lot of us feel that pressure from the opposite sex. Because as you have rightly said before, women in relationships should be, back on women, a relationship should be a place of comfort, a place of strength, a place where you can rest your head. And you know, a lot of times it is actually a place of conflict. You know, the battle of the sexes, so to speak, and the battle goes on in different degrees and the different amounts in different relationships. And if we, and I'm not saying men or women, if we were able to fix that divide, because you know you could also go into the famous discussion about black families and the level of divorce rates and single parents and so on and so forth. If we go into that conversation, we start to go back to what Raga was saying about building children, strong children from now before they become broken men and women, and it still goes back to relationships. So that's why you tend to find that this conversation seems to be always going back to the relationship between men and women, as opposed to mental health. Because if you look at mental health for people who have physical, clinical issues, you know, like predisposed because of different genetic situations, that is a different type of mental illness. But we're talking about those who develop and talking outside of sexual abuse, physical abuse of children. Talk about men as adults. And when you look at the main thing, all of your spirit and you come back to woman again, and how they, you know, how you perceive yourself as a man in a relationship or lack thereof a relationship, you know. And a lot of time it comes back to our partners, because I am of the belief that we weren't made to be by ourselves, we were made to be a team. We were made to come together and a union, man and woman. So when that go ahead, sorry, here's your floor.
Yeah. So, and as you say that, you pique my excitement there, because like I say, I mean, some persons subscribe to the Bible, some don't. I do. It is where I draw principles for living, and I tell people, you know, it is well documented and it highlights some important principles that we miss. Some people may not know it, but in the book of Genesis, it tells a story about Adam and Eve. God created Adam and Eve. I'll just give you some snippets out of it, right? He made Eve out of Adam. Whoever is here, this is not a theological discussion, so all the theologians in here, this is not an opportunity for that. I'm just saying, look at the principle. He said he made them, and when they look at
everything that's talking.
And if we look at Genesis, it said that they were naked, but they were not ashamed. They were naked, but they were not ashamed. Good? So one, it allows us to understand that there's always a context for relationships to thrive according to the divine order of God's divine order. That if a relationship has to thrive, both parties in the relationship must learn how to be naked. And I'm not talking about physically naked. Some of us don't see that picture already, but I'm talking about learning how to be vulnerable in a relationship. So that as a man, you need to learn how to be vulnerable. As a female, you need to learn how to be vulnerable. Right? You need to know how to be vulnerable. Right? The challenge is that many men wait for the woman to set the pace of how to be vulnerable, but we are the persons who are usually should set that pace for how to be vulnerable. Good? And again, remember, we are not perfect. We'll always make mistakes, but I'm talking about the ideal. So that the more comfortable you are with the nakedness, the openness of your partner, and managing that openness, is the easier it is for your relationship to thrive. Look at what happened. In the Bible, it says that Eve was tempted by a serpent, she ate an apple and so forth. As soon as she ate the apple, her eyes were open and she realized that she was naked. What did the tree represent? It represented knowledge of good and evil. I'm just saying in the context of principle, sometimes the problem we have is that we have too much information and we take too much information from too much people. And so it affects the openness and the nakedness in a relationship, because you want to listen to this friend, that one, this one, and not having an open, naked conversation with your partner. Right? Here, what's going on? Go and get better. So men, sit down for this one. Sit down for this one, men. Here what went on. Right? She take the apple after Eve eyes open. She finally realized she naked. All the time she naked, you know, right? But she away from her man, so she naked. No problem. When God asked her what went on there, God asked Adam, the man, what went on there. You know what Adam said? He said, hey, this woman make me do it here. Problem. He started blame. He started blame. And that is the thing. Too many times in relationships, we trying to play a blame game, trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong, right? Trying to see who, hey, no. At some point in time, it is irrelevant who was right and who was wrong. He started playing. We have to take responsibility because regardless of the situation, every person in a normal relationship would have contributed in some way or the other to any disturbance, right? The key is identifying what would have caused the breakdown and trying to work on addressing the issue. And understand nobody imperfect. Don't have an unrealistic expectation. Let me tell you something. If a person said they might not do it again, there's a high likelihood that they would do it again. But it's a work in progress, right? So that's why I say people is get tied up with relationships. Relationships are not designed really primarily for you to be happy. It was designed to create character in you. Because if you can develop character as a human being, when I say character, a sense of goodness and righteousness as a human being, you will have a better relationship. Make sense? Madam, before I preach.
Wow. Terana, I feel like we could go whole night, you know, boy. You're dropping some gems. Well, I think the poll has been closed and overwhelmingly the people want more Terana, you know.
Yeah, boy, oh gosh.
Yeah. He had to come back again.
Anytime, gentlemen. There's no problem at all. Right? You just name the date, name the time.
All right. I like that. I see even Los Gens said they need you on one of their episodes of Sip and Chat. So
okay.
I'll probably get contact
Los
from
Gens are level 2, yeah. I see Los Gens already, not for free.
Yeah.
We talk to that right
I will talk to
Callum. Tell him go through my agent. Go through the agent. Go through my agent, Callum. Callum is the agent, man.
We really enjoying having you, and we realize we can speak whole night. The show is supposed to be an hour. We're already going to an hour and a half, and I realize we know warming up, but we can't keep your paper. I really keep the people wanting more. So what we'll do, we'll allow Dwight to leave up with some closing statements, you know, and then we allow yourself to leave up some closing words. So fair enough. So Dwight, touch the mic before you go, you know, and thanks for coming all on stage, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dwight.
Now with certain things what Mr. Abner said there, I am totally in agreement with, because one of the things you really and truly had to work on is identifying your triggers, like working with a situation like, hey, how does this affect me, or does this cause me to come out of character all the time? Because it have plenty times you'll be by yourself, you will deem yourself to be this type of person, but plenty times a situation or sometimes a person, because you could be a naturally quiet person or whatever, but there's just this one person that always brings you out of character. That is your trigger right there. That is how I just see it with plenty aspects in terms of the mental health, because what that person is doing is poisoning your mental health.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. That person is poisoning your mental health. That person is making your situation where you would have been going good on a part, but then this person comes and now that destroy all the progress you would have been making in carrying yourself forward or dealing with the situation of your mental health. You know?
Yeah.
And
so that the question might be, sorry to interject, the question might be then, what is the emotion in that? What about that person is triggering you? So what emotion? So remove the person and then we identify the emotion. And then usually every emotion is connected to a thought. So if we can identify the thought that is connected to what we feel, right? Then we can begin the process of behavioral adjustment or behavior
Adjustment.
modification. Yeah, because the way you're feeling is in response to something you're telling yourself.
Of course,
Some
of course.
conversation. Yeah. So it's not sometimes. So that's why sometimes it's not the person. It's like, hey,
The situation,
I this person. What am I feeling? Because the thing is, you might be angry at that person, but you're really angry at somebody from before.
No, does this go back to unresolved issues again? When I touched earlier on, this goes back to unresolved issues, you know, because you never dealt with a situation. You understand? You never dealt with a situation. Like put it like I just using like an ex, right?
Okay.
Something happened between you and that ex, but you never dealt with the situation. So this person will always cause you to probably either come out of character or probably cause you some sort of disturbance to your mental health and your mental progression.
So that the question is, when we are confronted by feelings, we ask ourselves, what am I thinking that is making me feel this way? And then what we do is we pass that thought through a sense of our knowledge of truth. Is this true about me? So for example, a person might say, I don't like that haircut. I vex. In other words, what I thinking is you telling me I ugly. But like the person never tell you you're ugly, they tell you don't like the haircut. But then why am I thinking that this person is telling me I'm ugly? So then let's have a truth. Am I ugly? Yes, no. No, I'm not ugly. So then I don't need to interpret it as a trigger.
The Chinese, I always remember hearing this phrase, and I also believe it to be true. It goes, you are not who you think you are. You are not who other people think you are. You are who you think other people think you are. So when you mention that about the person talking about the haircut and you think you're ugly, you said the person never tell you that, but you think that what they think you are.
Yeah. And that's something we do. So like somebody might tell somebody, hey boy, you didn't do this good. They say, so what you're saying that's stupid or I never tell you it's stupid.
You take it as a personal attack.
You didn't do this. So it tells us then that somewhere unconsciously, as you're saying, there is a statement, a thought process in your brain that you are saying to yourself, this person, but it is far from the truth. So that in order to really get or to overcome or to not allow these things to get the better of you, you have to know how to confront what we call these distorted thought patterns. And we can probably, again, so much things to look at. There are general distorted thought distortions that persons have that need to be confronted. And we need to confront these things with the truth, because sometimes the truth is very far from what we are feeling at any point in time. And we allow ourselves to get carried away with the feelings, but it is not the truth.
Wow. But Terran, Dwight, you know, and I keep saying we could go on whole night, I say go on whole night, but we had to wrap up at some time. All the things must come to an end. But this is not the end.
I see people clamoring for a part two. I see the audience clamoring for a part two. I honestly think we should do this again, because in terms of the mental health, we touched on a lot of topics here that even some of the things that Mr. Abner said, that when I listened to it, it's like he was speaking to me personally, because it's like, now I probably understand certain things, like why. So and I think a lot of people in the comments would have also said the same certain things. I would have said certain things, Mr. Abner would have said certain things, Callum would have said, that people could personally relate to. So I honestly think, there needs to be a part to this topic now, right? Because it needed.
So Abner, when you have time, you let us know, and we go and clear the floor for you.
Yeah, you let me know, man. I feel enough for you guys. You guys are an excellent panel. Only made it easy for me to just talk. Good. So I had to just again. I'm glad it was a conversation, and I appreciate that kind of environment. So I mean, you guys
Okay,
made it
we really
easy for it to happen.
on behalf of
Anytime,
myself.
when you are ready, give a couple of weeks and you let me know when you're ready.
Nice man. Well, on behalf of myself and the man Kevin Chef Williams, the Labrador General Labrador by extension, I want to thank you for your amazing insight into this topic of men's mental health. Folks, remember this month of June is Men's Health Month, and part of men's health is a part which we look over far too many times, mental health. And last week, which would have been the 14th to the, I've written down right here, the 20th, would have been Men's Mental Health Week, and that's why we chose this topic. And what we have realized that this topic is far wide, far ranging, and it's really sparked a lot of interest, a lot of feedback. So it's something we need to continue speaking about, something we need to recognize, and we are pleased that so many people recognize the place and the importance of men's mental health. And we hope that tonight's program would have shed a lot of light on some questions you may have. We know that conversation we need to keep having. I want to thank Mr. Dwight Austin for joining us tonight. He may not be a mental health professional per se, but then he is a professional because he's a man and he has his mental health, his mental well-being to take into consideration. So he is a professional to this topic, so we really appreciate that. As always, we have a couple of things we must touch before we leave. Guys, we have a tradition here in our agenda where we just always touch on the birthdays. But let me touch on before the birthdays. Let's touch on the quote of the day because we had two this time. We couldn't skip Raga's comment because it was really so poignant. So let's go over Raga's comment again. Take extra time out to listen to the children these days because it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men and women. Raga says so. Love until. Thank you, Raga.
Excellent.
And also we put another quote of the day, which we think was in on this topic also, to remind women and men and society on the world, men get depression, men get anxiety, men get suicidal thoughts, men get mental illnesses. Maybe instead of saying mother, say it's okay to talk about it.
Callum, just the other day I had that picture up. I had that same exact picture up. And you see some of the responses of women to that? I ain't lie, boy. The emotional health of men really and truly ignored, Really and truly ignored. Until I had that picture up on my social media.
It was the next show day, so those are the next show.
Yeah, and I just say this as I see the picture, I just brought back memories of some of the ladies' responses, and I was like,
I know. But we had to wrap it up. But as we say serious, we're going to bring back Terror and God Spare Life, God willing.
Yeah.
We're going to go at this round 2 and round 3. And we will probably take a chance and bring some women on the live show. So, boy, we got to work with Army Buckle. It'll be nice. You could probably bring Cross. She'll be a nice foil to Terror, So, also, as always, we touch on the birthdays. This is very important, So we have, let's see, today is the lovely Miss Natasha Morris' birthday. Happy birthday, love. May God continue to bless you and take care of you. Happy birthday. Today also is the man Jefferson George, my old goalkeeping partner. Also, Jefferson George is also our national senior team recently as the goalkeeping coach. He's the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Coaches Association. Brilliant, brother. Happy with strong brother.
That was schoolmate. That was schoolmate too, eh? So big respect, Jeff, man.
I know. Well, now we are talking about that because
old Princess Tongue schoolmate, boy. Old Tongue schoolmate, Jefferson George, boy.
Yeah, man. Also, we have Nicolene Burnley. Hey, happy birthday, second wife. That is our inside lag. The first wife gave me a chance. I'm making another joke. Look at it. Better health. Yeah, happy birthday, love. This week, we have Damian Langley as our old schoolmate of my own. Happy with strong, my brethren. Trisha Thomas, Labrador International. Trisha, happy birthday, honey. April Reyes from Point 14 Football Extraordinary. April, happy with strong babes. Melanie Tobias, the Guyanese International, happy birthday. Chicken Curry woman, happy birthday. And tomorrow, we have the man Brenton De Leon, aka Poppy. Happy birthday tomorrow, Poppy. Enjoy it. So, guys, wrapping it up here. So I'll allow Dwight to say goodbye because I know you have to go and do the people work. So Dwight, touch it before you go.
Can you hear me, son?
Right. I say, well, I'll allow you to say goodnight before you go.
Listen, yeah, gentlemen, it was great being on your show. Hopefully, we could do it again some other time.
All right,
Yes,
thanks for
right,
the
too.
assurance, my friend. Assurance.
Yeah, man.
Terran?
Hey, well, again, Library Agenda, the privilege was all mine. Again, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this session, and I look forward to the next meeting where we can really continue along these lines. All right. So it was a blessing to me. And again, at the end of the day, be good to yourself. You know what I mean? Be good to yourself. At the end of the day, nobody can do you like you and love you like you. Be good to yourself. Right? All right, and that's it.
Yeah, man. Well, we thanking you. We just running through some of the last comments before we go. And Chef, to close out, I think we had to play that poem again. That poem, that flower spitting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But we touch on so many things tonight that I just want to summarize for those who are coming a little late. I'll just take 1 minute, right? I'll just pick out a few. I call it my top 7 out of the myriad we had, right? So, Mr. Abner would have spoken about emotional, psychological, and social well-being, most important, right? We touch on ego, anxiety, depression, and cultural norms. He touched on stages of grief from denial to bargaining to acceptance. A key one, scheduling your worry time, scheduling your time to deal with the issues. Don't worry about it whole day, right? Very important. We touch on professional counseling, right? Some situations need that. We can't just think we could do it by ourselves all the time. Professional counseling. Something that stuck with me, two broken people make up the relationship. It hit me for 6, but I understood when he explained, right? Relationships have a purpose. Right, it's to develop character, right? And last but not least,
two broken people make up the relationship.
getting a little feedback there. Last but not least, conflict is not the end of the relationship, right? So that's it. That's it on my end. So, Mr. Abner, thank you very much. Thank you very much for tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Right here on the Library Agenda.
Yeah, man. No,
Batman.
I think we're the break to the show. Now, what have we been doing? We have started a YouTube channel, the Library Agenda. So subscribe, like it, folks. We've been trying to load the show in the order in which they were aired. But I think this episode, we'll skip. We'll put this episode up one time. So we will probably date, so you have to follow, but we're going to put up this episode one time. Tonight, I'm going to do tonight. When we done, I'm going to do tonight. So if people want to go back and look at this episode, it'll be there up on YouTube, on our YouTube station channel, the Library Agenda, same namesake. Like, share, subscribe to the Library Agenda YouTube page. They'll help us get this thing up and running. Okay, folks? So, it's me, Fire Marshal. And you know me, I always say you could have been anywhere in the world, but you choose to be here with us, and we really appreciate you on the Library Agenda. We allow people talk.
Library business.
So, Chef, close you out and pop the poem with it.
Of course. So it was a pleasure, everyone. Thanks again for your continued support. Library Agenda to the world. And tonight, we leave you all with the lovely poem. It's called Not for Women. Don't be offended. It's titled Not for Women by Mr. Darren Sandy. We exit with this. Library, we out.
Library.
Not for women. The title alone may sound contentious, is not that. It's just as we stepped into new eras, much of what we know as man has been classed as error. Men now live in terror, afraid to be man, afraid to be given the brand of toxic. The story of man has received a plot twist. As such, this generation frowns on tradition. So woe unto the man who still punks his chest and says, I am the man. Such expression is classed as violent. But last time I checked, When I beat in my chest, that is when I'm proud of myself. So this is a man poem. A man who still heads the household poem. Armed with that iron fist, but a cocoa butter palm. His family feels safe from harm, yet comforted in his arms. They know he's soft, but they also know he could be hard. So this is a man poem. A man who still believes that crying is temporary, for inside of the tears, there must be a victory, an overcoming solution. This is a man poem who knows that man must come out of his ruins. This is a man poem, a spotlight for the man who still have the night inside, knowing that women do not naturally need saving. But if they are in danger, I'd save them or die giving it a try. That is why they call me man, and this is a man's poem. For the men who still see themselves as kings, presenting themselves as beings not afraid to spread glorious wings to seek his queen. Knowing that the attraction to woman is not some ill-fated omen. Yes, in this poem, men still pursue women. I told you this was a man poem. A man who knows that he answers to a greater being. So the earthly skin, that has its shedding to do. His mistakes are not his permanent state. A man knows he has some growing to do. Constantly. He knows when to put aside the ego. But blessed is he who knows when it is time to gloat. In this poem, the man still wants to be the GOAT in whatever he does. He strives for greatness from the way that he works to the way that he loves. In this poem, men still take pride in self. They appreciate the bass in their voices and the way the gym gives them the choice if to feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator, if to just rock back and feel like themselves. In this poem, women still like manly men and do not hope for a replica. I guess this poem is from the old school where fathers and sons played cowboys or Indians, yet the son never came out a gun fool. Man, this poem so old school. Man still know how to take talk in the field of sports and responds with his skills. That is how men does sort things out. This poem so old school. It's still walking on the side of the road with the oncoming cars, cause if a brakes cable bust, then you rather take the lash than the woman who is half of your heart. The other half you keep for yourself, for your own personal breathing. This poem so old school. It not leaving the burning house till the woman and children and family pet come out. His man we name, and as man we know how to blot out coward when it's time, except when a cockroach fly inside. Man, men have had it in an age where we are targeting man's failed habits. This poem is a reminder that man still having madness, and this is something to be proud of. And yes, we still in tune with our emotions. But there is a scent that is man. It is a rough kind of smooth. Know when to be rude. Know when to tell your doubt move. Know when a bout must be brewed. Know when it's time to stop feuds and be cool. In this poem, man still submits to God and lives as such. So let that train your sons, because God alone knows what they expect of men in 2021.
Boom.
Outside.
Elaborate. Great guests, great times. We will link you next week. Look out for this show we had on YouTube, our YouTube station, the Library Agenda. Well, I will talk.
Library business. Out.